Welcome, Patreons, back to the Facts of Geek Life. I am the titular Charlie Carden, coming at you with a very old friend of mine, a subject matter expert in what we're going to be talking about today. And if you haven't tuned into the show before, what we talk about is classic seasons of classic shows. We take 4 or 5 episodes and we break it down. So like I said, reaching out to a subject matter expert, which is what I decided to do. I'm bringing you my other college roommate, my first college roommate before the titular Todd Oxtra, that would be John Cyr, coming in from the Pacific Northwest. How are you today, my friend? Long time, long ago contributor to the Secret Friends Unite Network, but we've had you off. You've been off for a while because the grind. You're like, man, I'm not reading stuff. I'm not interested in talking about stuff. But when this came back around again, and we had a chance to talk about something that you really dig and you really wanted to talk about, boom, I found a way to bring you back because I've been trying to bring you back for a while. So this is perfect. I love it.
Doctor Who is usually a good way to draw me back into something.
Aha. And we have drawn, but not painted you into a corner because we wouldn't want to do that.
No.
But yeah, we're going to be talking about Doctor Who. This is series 9, and give me like the Reader's Digest version of kind of the return of Doctor Who, because it was a series in the 60s and the 70s and even the 80s a little bit, if I'm not mistaken. Then it was just gone for a while.
Yeah, I was really pretty late to the party, to be honest, with Doctor Who. And one thing I don't know a lot about was actually what brought the show back. I know it came back in 2005.
Right.
After about a 14 or so year hiatus. I know it ended in the 80s. There was obviously Classic Who ran a long time, quite a few years, 20-something plus years, I think, from the 60s into the mid-80s. They went through 7 different iterations or regenerations of the Doctor.
Man.
But for whatever reason, and I don't know all the details of it, but it kind of went away. They pulled the plug on it in the mid to late 80s. They did try a movie to bring it back that did not do very well, but it is kind of a bit of a cult classic. The Doctor was played in that movie by Paul McGann.
Okay.
And that was his only appearance as the Doctor.
Oh, boy.
He was the 8th Doctor. He had one movie, one shot. They kind of did a weird, hey, the Doctor is actually half human, half Time Lord. And it was not real well received.
Yeah.
But people liked him. And he's done a lot of audio dramas. And he's actually shown up in a couple of, they did like little webisodes around some of the, like the 50th anniversary special they did. They had like an 8-minute kind of, they gave him his opportunity to have his regeneration scene, essentially.
That's pretty cool.
That was cool.
Not a rousing success when they're like, all right, we're giving you a roll of the dice. Was it like a TV movie or was it like theatrical or?
I have to say I don't know if it was theatrical. It probably was theatrical in Britain, I would guess.
Yeah.
They tend to show a lot of these episodes in the theaters, like season openers and season enders in the theaters out there. As well as being on, BBC. But I ended up getting the movie on DVD to check that out, and it wasn't very impressive. I don't resonate too much with the older classic Who. I've watched quite a few stories. They're not bad. They're just, they're obviously made from a different time. They're over the top. Monsters of the Week, low budget.
Mm-hmm.
Funny thing with the Doctor is like half the season's just him running down corridors. I think like any of those old shows, I mean, you didn't have the technology to have really great effects. So you knew you were looking at ridiculous rubber masked monsters and terrible little stop motion things. But that's also what made it kind of fun, Yeah. That geeky, goofy side. And, like probably from the first Star Trek show, you've got some of that
Yeah, that's what I was
similar.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of too. If you look at the early first season and certainly the third season, we just watched this long documentary about the making of Star Trek over the 55 years, they had cut and slashed the budget. They were trying to get it canceled by making it put in a bad time slot and not giving them a lot of money. So yeah, you ended up with, and it's funny because when the show hit its 40th anniversary, they rolled back out and redid all of the outboard ship opticals and stuff. So they look gorgeous. They look very, 21st century. But yeah, rock monsters like the famous Kirk versus the Lizard Man, the Gorn, where they're throwing the big styrofoam rocks at each other. Yeah, exactly. But it's weird because that seems to have more of a what am I looking for? Like a fondness of it, where the Doctor Who stuff, like I watched a couple of those that you tipped me off to, and I was like, oh my God. and not all of them really exist anymore. So I know that was because they're all on BritBox or something. We watched this one on HBO Max, listeners, if you feel like tuning into Doctor Who, that's where they're all there right now. Pretty much all the modern ones are there now.
New Who, the ones that started
New Who.
Yeah, it's called, that's the kind of the reference. It's called New Who, Classic Who.
Gotcha. Yeah, but Classic Who is over on the BritBox.
Our good buddy Todd could probably explain to us all the licensing that goes into why Classic Who can't be on with a New Who, but
right.
You've got to find BritBox has some of them, and the early seasons, first few years, the first Doctor and the second Doctor, that was at a time when the BBC would tape over existing episodes for new episodes. So there are lost episodes out there that are still never been seen.
Oh my God. Well, they don't exist. Yeah. Like you said.
Every once in a while, some strange occurrence happens where somebody finds an old Doctor Who episode they happen to have on tape somewhere in some country randomly. Like I think someone in Africa came across a tape in some studio that had one of these episodes of Doctor Who that everyone thought was lost. So that comes out, but it's very funny. We're just the thought of, well, you don't have the storage space that you have to tape over things to put.
Well, yeah, it's what George Lucas wishes he could have done with the holiday special. but it just didn't work out. So, all right, let's dig in. So 2005, the show comes back, and that was Doctor number 9.
Doctor, which was Christopher Eccleston. He was the start of he kind of launched it. Yeah. And we can talks about that if we do a Christopher Eccleston conversation. But he
absolutely
really, we're talking about, funny effects and cheap sets, low budget. You could tell they weren't really sure this was going to take back off again.
Right.
But it did. It really only kickstarted again because he did so well. He played it such a good part. There are terrible episodes in that season, but also some really good ones too.
Yes.
But even now, if you look back, it's only 18 years ago. It is a very dated season to watch.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And you know what? And we jump forward a few years, and that's when we get into what we're talking about here, which is Series 9. And I thought, for the most part, visually, it didn't look dreadful, but it definitely looked dated, but probably better than kind of what you're describing, and certainly better than what you're going to find on friggin' BritBox. Without a doubt.
Series 9 was in 2015, so we're talking just 7-8 years ago. But again, even though it looks a lot more polished than the older stuff, it's still Doctor Who. There's still nods to, hey, we're still going to go around and fight silly monsters, but looks upgraded from what it used to look like. There is a big change. I think I noticed. I think it's around season 5 when Matt Smith comes in is when the look looks a lot more okay. They've got a budget now, but where they spend the budget, it's like, all right, it looks great, but then you still got some silly prop monsters and stuff.
Yeah, right. The recycled set pieces was a stalwart of the kind of the golden age of Star Trek with TNG and DS9 and Voyager, and even all the way through Enterprise. Even though there were different time periods, you would still see, there's this one prop that had like these 2 long clear cylinders that would rotate a little color through, and that it was a set piece from The Wrath of Khan, and it was in every one of those shows.
Is that all right, it'd be really random, but is that the thing in the movie Airplane 2 that Shatner makes a joke
it
about? That all we can see is
could
these lights
be.
go back and forth. We have no idea what they do.
It could be because that came out in 1982, which is when Wrath of Khan came out. So if that happened to have been, something that Paramount Pictures spent a lot of money on, they're probably going to get all the use out of it that they can. But
That was
awesome.
funny, but
Good deal. All right, let's jump in. So you chose 5 episodes. You said I'm going to give you 4, and then I'm going to give you a hamburger here. I'm going to give you a lemon of a lousy one. You said, and you figure out which the bad one is, and it just wasn't that hard. But let's get started. How do you want to do this? Do you want me to read the summary? Do you want to read the summary? What's kind of the way that you want to flavor this?
Well, I want to just do a quick little background on why I chose season 9.
Oh, cool. Yes, please.
For your first one. And just to kind of give an overall kind of idea of what happens during that season, because we're looking at pieces. And I'm sure you noticed as you watch, especially the last couple episodes, there are some parts that probably would have benefited from seeing some stuff earlier. Some breadcrumbs got dropped along the way because it is
maybe it wasn't
an overarching series, but it's off.
Yeah.
It's a thing here or there. It's like you can't piece it together.
Very true. Yes, I did. I was like, I know what a Dalek is. And then they're talking about Cybermen. And then they're talking about this person and that person. I'm like, yeah, okay. Well, it was easy to figure out, certainly in this first episode, his classic, his nemesis in there. It was a nemesis that he had some Darvosia was somebody he had some background with. So that wasn't so difficult. So, yeah. But anyway.
Okay. So I'm going to read a quick little summary just so you have an overarching idea for background. And then I'll let you... we'll get into the first episode that we watched.
All right, cool.
So series 9, and just personally, this is my favorite season of all of the New Who. So this is the one that I go to. It's got my favorite Doctor. It's got my favorite companion, and I think it's their strongest season together. And I also love Michelle Gomez, who plays the character of Missy, and she's in a few of these episodes.
So great. Oh, my God.
There's so many good things in series 9. It's like, this is the way I like to show people what the show can be. So series 9 is the second series that stars Peter Capaldi as the 12th Doctor. And I think most people would know, but essentially the Doctor is an alien Time Lord, travels through time and space in his TARDIS, disguised as an old British police box.
Awesome.
Series 9 also has Jenna Coleman as the Doctor's companion, Clara Oswald.
Baby.
Also her third and also her final series in the.
My heart! That was a tough one.
Also, in series 9, you have Michelle Gomez, who returns as Missy, who is actually she's also a Time Lord. She's known primarily as the Master, who has been the Doctor's foil ever since back to classic Who series 3 with the third Doctor. So he's a recurring character for a long time. Yeah.
But obviously not the same actress. She probably responds.
No.
Well, yeah.
In fact, she was the first female iteration of the Master, and that was a Series 8 reveal. So we missed that. But also a recurring role that year in Series 9, you had Maisie Williams playing a character named Ashildr.
Oh, my goodness.
Was originally a Viking girl. We didn't watch these episodes, but she was a Viking girl that was made immortal by the Doctor, which leads to major events resulting throughout Series 9 involving the Doctor, kind of keeping an eye on each other.
Mm-hmm.
That does wrap up in the 12th episode that we skipped, or we didn't watch.
Yeah.
But the main story arc of the series revolves around a mystery of a being called the Hybrid, which is a combination of 2 great warrior races. The Doctor's investigation into this being ultimately leads him back to his home planet of Gallifrey, which returns fully in the series. And Series 9, just to make a note, to back up my claim, I think it's the best one, received acclaim from critics, with many labeling it as the show's strongest season to date. So
nice.
This series, again, I think only has 1 really bad episode and a couple of meh episodes, but the majority of it is really, really good.
Yeah.
So what we did then is I gave you 5 episodes. I started off with the first 2 episodes of the season, which were a 2-parter. In fact, most of Series 9 is a series of 2-part episodes. There's 1 or 2 that I think are lone individual standing episodes, and then a very loose 3-parter to finish the series off. But a lot of, hour and a half stories, really.
Right. Right. Which I love. I mean, you see that is a hallmark of present day, because so much stuff is arc based, and you'll get, 10 episodes of a season will be a single story, and the 26 episodes where, 8 of them are crap, which was the old days of sci-fi like TNG, have fallen by the wayside in a lot of cases. But I like this. I like this interconnected story play. And these were some great episodes. So, yeah.
Yeah. So first episode then was the Magician's Apprentice, which is the series opener for Series 9.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't I turn that over to you, Charlie, if you have a little summary?
Excellent. Yes. So, and this was written by Stephen Moffat, and he's the big dude, the showrunner. His name is synonymous with Modern Who. So the Doctor attempts to rescue a boy on a battlefield, but upon discovering that the boy is a young Davros, who he finds out is an arch nemesis of his, abandons him and then goes missing. Back on Earth, Clara is summoned by UNIT, which is like S.H.I.E.L.D., if I'm not mistaken. They're kind of like
the
Ghostbusters or something like that.
The third Doctor, way back in Classic Who, they set up. I don't remember the acronym, what it means off the top of my head, but they're essentially, they have a way to communicate with the Doctor. They try to look for alien stuff on Earth. So in a way,
like Men in Black, kind of
like that. But
yeah, okay,
probably a good also analogy.
Gotcha.
I mean, it's also not very effective, to be honest.
Right. Oh, my goodness. So anyway, yeah, she gets summoned by UNIT because all these aircraft are freezing in the sky, and they find out that Missy is responsible. And so then Missy and Clara are together, and they got to track down the Doctor. They find his last will and testament, and they track him to Essex in England in the year 1138, where he's been having a big party with a tank, and he's got a electric guitar, and now he's wearing sunglasses instead of having his traditional screwdriver, which I thought was pretty sweet. They reunite with him, and then this bad guy, Colony Sarf, which I think is an awesome name, and he's a snake in robes, which is just like that's as metal as it gets. I love that shit.
You know what else is cool? Sarf is actually the Welsh word for serpent.
Ooh, somebody did their homework. I love it. I didn't
know that until fairly recently. I was like, oh gosh, I hope it's the Welsh word, not Scottish. I think it's Welsh. But yeah, it means serpent in one of the languages out there. So it's one of those kind of, oh, what a cool name, but also kind of lazy, but cool character. I like his design. He's cool.
It was cool, but it was lazy. So anyway, the three of them end up on this far-flung station, which Missy figures out is the planet is Skaro, which is the home of the Daleks. And the Daleks are great. They're little tanks with basically kitchen appliances hanging off the front, and all they flip up and down, and they say exterminate. It's like it's very low budget, but you clearly tell that they're trying to update it for this. So they get captured, and they appear to kill both of the ladies and destroy the TARDIS, but the Doctor is trapped with a very aged form of Davros, all hooked up to stuff. He looks like the Borg Queen, for Star Trek parlance. But then he returns. This ends up putting him back in that battlefield at the beginning, holding a weapon like he's gonna shoot the little boy. If I'm remembering correctly. Now I got to scroll back through my notes. Anyway, to be continued. Part one of 2. So holy crap. I loved it.
Oh, I'm glad you did. I love this episode. I think it's my favorite episode that starts a season. Series 8 was, Capaldi's first season. There was a lot of trying to figure out what they were going to do with them. They were trying to have him be kind of a grumpier version, similar to maybe some of the older Classic Who Doctors, but they also didn't really want that to be the way it went with them. Series 8's a little uneven because they're trying to figure out who he is and how to get him to own the character. Not of any fault of Capaldi, because he's amazing. I mean, he crazy good actor. And then there was chemistry, trying to figure out how to work him with Clara after she had worked with Matt Smith and his Doctor. Series 9, I think they all come into their own, and he just comes out on a tank, playing guitar with sonic sunglasses now.
I know, it's so metal. I love it. Just That's good stuff.
Yeah, and he just goes into all the dad joke puns with the people in England from the 12th century, and it's one of the things, like, I think when Missy says with the doctor is like, well, where's the doctor going to go when he knows he's got this confession dial, like, okay, something's up, something has scared the doctor enough that he's going to kind of go and just have a party and doesn't care about the rules anymore. It's like something is really off with him, which scares her, and when nothing scares the master or Missy.
Right.
So, they're like, well, where's he going to go? And one of the funny jokes with Doctor Who is you can go anywhere in all of space and time, but 70% of the time they're in England.
Right, exactly. It's like, it's like Star Wars and Tatooine. It's true.
Yeah, but also the cheaper sets are in England, since that's where they're
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, he goes back and he comes out on that tank in the guitar. It's just, they are leaning in hard to the more fun aspects of what Peter Capaldi can do. And that's kind of where they take him from that point forward, which is why I really love that series. It's they figured out who he's going to be. And that episode, just everything about that opening is fun to me. It sets the whole tone. And I absolutely love the pairing of Missy and Clara together. They're a fantastic little group. They really stand out in the next episode. So not to get too far, but
oh man, no, that was totally. And I didn't see anything in my notes that went too far outside of. I did love Clara as a school teacher, a naughty school teacher, maybe. John and I are both totally obsessed with Clara, by the way, if you hadn't picked up listening to this, because I can't, if you don't get it, I can't explain it to you. So never mind. Watch the episodes. You'll find out.
So during this episode, when the doctor's playing his electric guitar, he's teaching the medieval people, terms like dude and
dude, where's my tank?
Yeah, dude, where's my tank? But it kind of reminded me this. Sorry, this last rewatch reminded me a little bit of like Bill and Ted, going back in time, saying
Rufus.
dude, talking about the best water park in all of San Dimas or whatever.
Things are afoot at the Circle K or at the whatever the hell English equivalent would be.
Yeah, I don't know what it would be. There's some, I guess I don't know. But another thing that they did in season 8, once or twice, they had the Doctor, had a guitar in the TARDIS. That's never been in the TARDIS before. The Doctor's never really played guitar. There was one episode where he had a cold open of an episode where he played a little something on the guitar. And, I should have known it at the time, but didn't actually learn this when I got into a YouTube vortex of old, like, Craig Ferguson talk show. No. Peter Capaldi played the guitar and was in a punk rock band called the Dream Boys with Craig Ferguson in the 80s.
What? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So he's out there. That's him playing guitar. It's like he knows what he's doing. And it was pretty cool. Like, okay, they integrated that part of Capaldi's real life into.
That's funny. Oh my goodness.
The Doctor. So, when he pulls that guitar out, it's like, okay, haha, wink, wink. The Doctor now plays guitar, but it's actually Capaldi just likes playing guitar, so he's going to do it.
It's kind of the same thing, and it's much less cool. But with Jonathan Frakes, who is Riker on TNG, plays the trombone, and they work that into the character's arc. But what's sexy about the trombone? I know it's not the guitar. It's not it's not its own rock band. There's no rock band unless it's ska music, I guess. So anyway, let's move this along. So we got part 2. Ooh, and they gave us the big at the end of this, Missy got zapped and Clara got zapped, and they're both dead. Of course, you're like, there's got to be some way around this. But all right, part 2 again. We had the same creatives on this. Stephen Moffat writing. Hitty McDonald was doing the directing. Using the Dalek energy, Missy was able to power her teleport for her and Clara, and they escaped. Okay, you saw that coming. The two attempt to find the Doctor, and they go into this. I love this. They go into the sewers, because Daleks don't, do number 1 and number 2, but because they never die, they just turn into goo. And that's what's in the sewers is just Dalek consciousness like dripping off the walls. It's kind of jacked up. While they're down there, a normally alive Dalek confronts them. They kill it, and then Clara climbs inside of it, which is like, that I wouldn't have done that. It just kind of had a bad vibe. So the doctor is back with the old, Davros, and he's starting to feel bad about having abandoned him when he was a boy. And so the doctor says, I'll give him a little bit of my juice and maybe that'll save his life. But guess what? That's a trap. Davros had been, playing on his sympathies the whole time. And he sucks up that regeneration juice and he starts powering up the little city. I love the little city with the little, when you saw it from a great distance, all the Daleks kind of flying around in circles and going up and down. Like they look like little slider dials on a recording board. They're like, doot, doot, doot. But it does restore the energy to the dead Daleks who want to kill the alive Daleks. So you just started a Dalek civil war, which is pretty sweet. Doctor and Missy encounter Clara's Dalek. She tries to trick the doctor into killing her, but fails, and they ask for mercy. And this is where you find the back and forth. Anytime the Dalek wants to say something like, I love you, they just say, I want to kill you or something.
Exterminate.
Yeah. Exterminate. So every Dalek loves you. That's the when they're saying exterminate, they just really want to hug. So
that whole part where Missy's telling Clara to say things like, say you're different than me, and then she says it, but the Dalek says exterminate.
Exactly. Very limited. It's like Klingons, today is a good day to die. So anyway, Missy uses this as a chance to get away. The doctor does pull his sunglasses out. He gets the TARDIS back, which of course it avoided destruction through automated systems because, okay, that's a trope right there. You think, all is lost and everybody's dead. And then the next episode, everybody's fine. He then goes back to the battlefield where he does rescue young Davros and helps him get home. So he, in the end of it, set everything back in motion again, but he had his conscience at the end of it. So what a super cool two-parter. I love that.
Yeah, it's really great. How, the theme of the two episodes really goes back to, and in fact, they even play some excerpts of classic Who episodes where the Doctor and Davros had confrontations before, where the fourth Doctor even asks Davros, and they play this clip. I think it's in the first episode, actually, in The Magician's Apprentice, where, the Doctor says, if someone who knew the future pointed out a child to you and told you that child would grow up to be totally evil and a ruthless dictator and would destroy millions of lives, could you kill that child?
You'd be like, fuck them kids.
Right. So like the Doctor, clearly, he's guilty and has shame for the fact that it looked like he didn't help Davros, when he was stuck in that field at the beginning of the first episode and he abandoned him to die.
Right.
But, he survived, and it looks like, Davros remembers and hates the Doctor and whatnot. At the end of Which is Familiar, which is kind of like the misdirection cliffhanger from the first episode when the Doctor goes back, says, I'm going to save my friend the only way I know how, and he's going to shoot Davros. Well, he's actually shooting all the little hand mines around him, because when they encounter Clara in the Dalek and she asks for mercy, he's like, a Dalek shouldn't know that concept of mercy. And so the end of the episode where he goes back to where it all started at the beginning of the first episode with little Davros, he takes him and shows him some mercy, which has this little tiny effect, at least, that the concept of mercy is hidden away in there somewhere deep down in the Dalek consciousness, because Davros was shown mercy. Again, you could say, that's like a Deus Ex Machina type thing,
Totally.
Like Doctor Who, it's loosey-goosey. It's like he says when he gets inside the Dalek and goes in and confronts them, and he's like, the real question is, where did I get this cup of tea? He's like, I'm the Doctor, just accept it. It's like Doctor Who. It's just not hardcore sci-fi. It's some sci-fi, but it's goofy nonsense.
Right.
Just don't ask, enjoy. It's kind of a lot of what Doctor Who asks sometimes. And for people who get really into I can't suspend my disbelief, or this doesn't make any sense. Well,
why are you watching sci-fi anyway then? Yeah, exactly.
You're fighting little octopus creatures inside pepper pots with the plunger on their, casing, you're you're not gonna like get real hardcore stuff. Just the doctor can do it, and
Right.
um, the, this episode though started off with Missy sort of explaining how she was able to save herself and Clara with this little fancy transporter energy wristwatch, whatever. This
Right.
also explained. You didn't see this because we skipped right to series 9, but the season 8, Missy, died, but she used this same thing to get out of it, and
Right.
that's kind of explained of where she came from. And in fact,
Gotcha.
actually, what's funny now that I think about it, in this episode when he's got the cup of tea and he says, "Well, where'd it come from? Don't worry about it. I'm the doctor. Accept it." In the first
Right.
episode, when Missy showed up, she had that, when she had stopped all the planes, and then her head comes out of the screen, and she goes, "Yeah, that's me. I'm back, not dead. Get over it. Whatever. It doesn't matter."
Nah.
It's just like, yeah,
Kind of breaking the fourth wall.
pretty much.
Oh,
She's talking to everybody in that way. But one of my favorite parts of this episode is, and it really highlights Michelle Gomez just has such a fun time screaming and laughing and goofing while they're in the sewers, killing Daleks, blowing things up. But then she's
right.
also, so she's like goofy, but she's also deliciously evil, because then she turns on a dime with how she tries to get the doctor to just kill her friend, or kill the friend
Yeah,
of
right.
the Dalek. He doesn't know. It's just so uncomfortable, but it's like, this is exactly what the master would do. This is what Missy is kind of to Doctor Who what I would say Loki is to Marvel.
Yeah.
He's a villain for sure,
Right.
but also anti-hero sometimes.
Right.
Uh, and they're for a long time they're more or less the only two Time Lords you really ever get on screen. They've gone through times where they're the only two, the last two. Well, they're maybe not the last two, but they are the two
Right.
that go back and forth for a long way.
You'll find that's the case with like Kang in Marvel, which is now more of a thing. You got with the Ant-Man movie coming out, and he was in Loki season 2. That it's that, and Todd and I just covered this in one of our other Patreon shows where we did a little mini series where he's never really dead because he came from the future, but he went to the past and they split off and he did this and that. And so it's kind of the same bit. It's that you can't really kill it off because the permutations of the multiverse, which just works so great for everybody. That can be used to expunge out a multitude of sins. But I really dig on this one myself. What are some of the other things from my notes?
What do you got, Charlie? What did you think? This is the first time you've seen these, right?
Yes, absolutely. No, I loved the overtones between kind of the Borg vibe of Davros, because he's very with the wires hanging loose, and he's on like a little Segway to get around. He's the little wheels and stuff because he's like 1,000 years old. And I swore even the first time I watched this, I'm like, is that Ian McDiarmid? Because my God, it's so close to Palpatine. He even says some of the same lines I wrote on here. He says, "Let me look on you with my own eyes," which was Vader's line from Return of the Jedi. I swear, there's a lot of overtones. I think a few of the Daleks that we see in kind of the little meeting room had R2D2's like color scheme to them. There was a lot of mishmash between the Borg and kind of the Return of the Jedi vibe in this for me. I love the sewer bit. That's awesome. The Daleks are eternal, but when they finally break down, they just turn into goo, but they're even more pissed off. And so they're just looking for any opportunity to come back. So it's just like, oh my God. And it was the Cybermen that with the Matt Smith Doctor Who, there was a comic book crossover with TNG that involved the Borg, but I like the Daleks more. And I don't know, this is without knowing a ton about the Cybermen, but I just think the Daleks are great. And maybe it's my exposure to them was the Lego Dimensions video game, the one that I played with my kids for years, where you have little Lego bits and you put them down on the pad and then they're in the game. And one of the worlds was Doctor Who. So I learned a lot from that, but the Daleks were always kind of my favorite. But this was an awesome one, and it had a little moral at the end of the story with the Doctor, a little character development where he, learned something about himself. And so I loved it. This was pretty great.
Yeah, the Daleks, they, clearly they're an old classic Who monster villain, but there's not really. I think one of the things that they've had trouble with New Who now. this is not my opinion because I love the Daleks. I think they're hilarious. I think they can be threatening. I think that they're entertaining as can be. But, they're not really a great modern age villain. They move around so slowly and they just barely replicate. And some people in the fandom feel like the Daleks are cartoon versions of themselves now. They're not really a threat. They're made to kind of be ridiculous, but I love them. I think they're just a fun.
Yeah.
The things that they say crack me up still, even on multiple rewatches. I love it when something doesn't go to plan and they start panicking and they're like, explain. It's like it's incomprehensible that they don't understand what could have gone wrong. And
Error.
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead, please.
I was gonna say, and the other thing with Davros, so yeah, there is definitely a Palpatine type of vibe to his voice, and he is the ultimate evil. I mean, he is the creator of the Daleks. And some of the things they deal with was in the meat of these episodes is the interaction really between the Doctor and Davros. A lot of moral compass type of conversation, and Davros asking if he's a good man. It's actually a mirror because in Series 8, the Doctor is asking Clara as he's trying to figure himself out, am I actually a good man? So there's a lot of, hey, Davros and the Doctor, you guys have a lot in common, actually, even though one's a genocidal maniac. You could actually argue the Doctor has done a lot of immoral things, too, to his own code and can bend the rules.
A lot of gray. Yeah.
Can Davros not do that, too? So it's interesting because you also have the Doctor then. Davros ultimately tricked him, which is, shock, Davros tricked him.
Yeah, right.
He's
the
doing
bad
all
guy,
he can.
The bad guy did a bad thing.
I can't believe it. But, he's doing all he can at the end there to try to save his arch nemesis, even though he knows it's going to hurt him in the end. He's just going to, if I do save Davros, he's going to do something evil again in the future to my own, it's going to bite me, essentially.
Right.
And by the end of Series 9, he goes to great lengths to try to save Clara. And you don't see this in episode 12, which I'm going to say you should watch episode 12 just to get closure on that because Clara might be back. I'm just saying. Ends up
please
doing all he can to save her is like the most disastrous thing he could ever do. So it's kind of this, he's refusing to lose people. And even his enemies, he's like, I don't want to lose them. It's almost like he's been around so long that these people in a weird way kind of even are like his friends.
Right.
They're my enemies, but hey, I'm familiar with them, and that's all I've got. He's like 1,300 years old or whatever. So
yeah, right. That's a tough one.
Making new friends because he loses everybody all the time.
Right.
A lifespan of thousands of years. Companions are mostly humans that don't live that long.
Yeah, right. Even Thor managed to make friends because he was 1,500 years old, and he was still managed to be friends with people on Earth and like what's his butt, the rock guy who was voiced, and now I'm drawing a blank. And Mick and the Guardians of the Galaxy. So maybe take some life lessons from that. So I had one last note. I love it when Missy. This is obviously punctuates her character. She goes to leave and to say goodbye to Davros. She pokes him in his third eye, and then she's like, "Goodbye."
No one's tried to do that before,
Yeah, exactly. Boop. She gave him a boop.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed that two-parter. That is they're really good episodes. They're fun. I don't necessarily think they're maybe the best episodes to start someone who's never watched Doctor Who with, but with a little bit of some background and just base knowledge of some of the characters from even a really high level, they're just good episodes and they're fun, even if you don't really know everything going on or the whole weight of the backstory.
Right.
Which is also, and so the last thing I want to say about these two is the titles were a little weird. Magician's Apprentice and Witch's Familiar. But it took me longer than I care to admit that I figured out. Essentially, the titles of those episodes both refer to Clara as the doctor, who's the magician. She's the apprentice in the first episode. And in the second episode, Witch's Familiar, she's with Missy that whole episode. She's doing the good of the doctor and the bad of the master. And she's on both sides of it throughout this two-parter.
Gotcha.
So it's just kind of an interesting little play on words. Like, okay, what's Clara picking up here? And it kind of it feeds into this. Clara's becoming more and more like the doctor. She wants to seek out more and more, world-saving type of adventures. And she's thinking and becoming more like these Time Lord people, even though she's a human. And it might, spoiler, come back to bite her in the end. That
What? Oh no! Yes,
But
curiosity.
let's not get there. Let's go to the next one, which I'm assuming this is going to be the one that you're going to be like, yeah, thanks for this one.
Yeah, this was the at the bottom of the bin. I get the feeling they're like, oh, we got to squeeze in one more. And again, was it episode 9 of the season? Am I reading these correctly? Yeah, episode 9 of the season. So this is Sleep No More, and I notice this all the time on Code 47 when we're talking about Star Trek episodes. When you have a director and a writer that are names that don't just jump out at you, you kind of get a feeling you might be in for like, yeah, we bought this script off of somebody because we really needed to vamp it. But so this centers around, and again, it's a found footage format, which it's a trope that gets old. Let's face it, when we all saw what the hell was the Blair Witch back in 1999? Oh my God, this is so crazy because it could have really happened, blah, 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 blah. And then it just became, and this was 15 years after that, it just kind of became Trope City. So a 4-person team arrives on Triton, which is a moon of Neptune. It's one of those big moons at a lab in a space station in the 38th century around Neptune. I'm sorry, it does say that right here. And the station has fallen silent. Again, you're watching this through all this video. As they're walking through with their body cams, they run into the Doctor and Clara. Hello, and they say they're assessing things, and they meet this science guy Rasmussen. You already really don't like him because he seems like he's kind of who he was is what I wrote in my notes. He's Paul Reiser's character from Aliens. He's Carter Burke. That's who he is. And you'll see kind of as things evolve that it really falls. So anyway, Rasmussen says he's the last survivor and the creator of these big pods called Morpheus, which reduces the time people are allowed to sleep and they can work more, which remind me of that like super racist like comedy gung ho from the early 80s about a town in Pennsylvania that the Japanese bought in auto parts and all people want to do is work all the time. But what it does is that it mutates the person inside into this weird little creature that's carnivorous because, why wouldn't it be, called the Sandmen? And so the 4-person team is on the run for them. But Rasmussen is planning to use the rescue ship to leave them all there, go to the moon, and then releases Morpheus there with the Sandman and is not, because it's now become spread by spore. So it's like, it's like the Walker virus, or it's like in The Walking Dead, the thing that it kills everybody there. So the Doctor destroys the station shields. They send it spinning into Neptune. And then he quickly figures out, he figures out how Morpheus is spread, and that the story just seems to be totally fake. And the Doctor and Clara and I think the one surviving person of the 4-man team escape because the other ones get whacked off by the Sandman, they get eaten or whatever. That horrible song, Mr. Sandman, keeps playing over and over again, that old song from the 50s. So that got old real quick. You find out Rasmussen is a Sandman, and he obviously put it all together, but the Doctor defeats him, of course. And all is well. Yeah, that final shot is that he's recording a video and he starts to melt it because you can see he's a Sandman. Oh boy. And it's great. The starting line starts out, "You must not watch this." And I'm like, why didn't I just turn it off then? He told me not to watch it, but John told me to watch it. So I had to watch it.
Well, I thought it fit well in with your theme of take the bad.
Right. And this is, bad. It's funny because we're in, we've been doing this show for a little while now. And yeah, you're the first one who I think of the guests that I've had that has followed that, saying, here's a really bad, some of them may have turned out to be bad, but I don't think anybody had plomped down and said, watch this bad episode. So, you know what? I'm here for it. I like that. I'm totally on board. So
just wait till I dump the episode Loving Monsters on you. Keep that in.
Monsters that you won't love. So, yeah, what, I got nothing. I've kind of expounded it all. So your turn.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I'm going to start out by saying that I actually really enjoyed this episode the first time we watched it for about the first 2/3 of it. But ultimately when it didn't go anywhere,
right, in circles,
it felt like a giant waste of time. I was not crazy about the Sandmen being the monsters, basically coming from like sleep in your eye, like the little crust that, oh, you sleep so much, you're going to develop so much of that, it's going to become sentient and consume you and
Of
become
course.
it's not unlike Doctor Who to take something from your everyday and turn it into a scary monster or something. They've done that with statues, with weeping angels. They've done it with
Right.
the little dust that floats in
Hmm.
sunlight. That those are actually living little Vashta Narada, and they will eat you. And you
Naturally.
gotta stay out of the
It adds up.
shadows. That stuff really works. But these I didn't like so much, and I think if the story would have been tighter and actually had a purpose for Doctor Who, and I'll expand on that in a minute. There could have been something there. So here's a couple of things about this episode um, that it felt to me like it ended as a part one of a two-parter. It was unresolved, like nothing got resolved, and it turns out that was actually supposed to have a second part in series 10 that got scrapped. So
You wonder why.
Mark Gatiss is the one who wrote this episode, and he tends to have an episode or two every season of Doctor Who, and he's very hit or miss. But if you ever watched the show Sherlock, Charlie, the Benedict Cumberbatch show Sherlock,
Yeah, I'm sure I've seen one or two.
Mark
Yeah.
Gatiss plays the brother on Sherlock, so he's pretty well known. But his episodes are not the best in Doctor Who's world. So it does seem like there was more to that story that was just abandoned. So in retrospect, it made the episode to me even that much worse. But
Right.
ultimately, what this ended up being, it was a very I don't know, I guess like a trial, a risky episode, just to try something very. Doctor Who had never done a found footage, had never done something like that. It was a whole different break from format, which was kind of why I liked it at the start because it felt so different, and it was kind of neat. You had that twist in the middle, where you find out, well, there are no cameras on this station. You're seeing things from people's point of view, but they don't have helmet cams on. It's like the sleep is actually watching you. That's where all the video feeds are coming from, because there's no cameras anywhere, but yet you're seeing everything. And you find out Clara has it because she went inside that Morpheus tank at some point earlier in the episode. So it's a little creepy in that way. So there are a lot of little pieces there that, you have the whole, we can make you work more and maximize work, and there's no time for sleep because we just pop you in here for 15 minutes and you can work for 23 hours. You have that whole story. You've got all these little things that are kind of cool. You have, all right, even the villains, like, I'm going to try to get this down to the planet so that we can spread this. There's at least some semblance of a story there. But what's funny is, I don't know if you caught it, but at least twice, maybe more, the doctor says a couple, this doesn't make any sense. This doesn't make any sense. And even at the very end of the episode, it's like, okay, they are getting off of the ship, and they're going to maybe prevent the spores from crashing into the planet or whatever. I'm even a little confused on how that ends. But he's saying it makes no sense as he gets into the TARDIS, and it turns out, well, it's not supposed to make sense, because at the very end, when that Rasmussen comes back on, you find out that he just concocted a Doctor Who story
Right.
that went nowhere to keep you watching, to try to make it exciting. He said, because he's been able to transmit the little signals of the little sleep monsters through whatever you're watching to you. So I had to keep you here for like 40 minutes so you could get everything to take hold, and now you're going to become Sandmen just like us.
Oh, but of course.
So it's like, so they had a Doctor Who episode about how it's not really a Doctor Who episode that you're watching because it's Doctor Who, but it's going to turn you into a sand monster. And it's like, okay, kind of cool to try, but man, it did not work for me at all. I think it's my second or third least favorite episode through the whole thing. It's by far Capaldi's worst episode, I think. Not that he's bad, but I think it's his worst story he's stuck with in all of his stuff. But the one thing that was kind of funny that I didn't catch until this last time I rewatched it was how Clara was very well versed on Morpheus and says, "Oh, you mean like the God of Dreams?" And And I was like, oh, and she stars in Sandman with Morpheus later in life here on the Netflix show that just came out. She was in.
Somebody was watching. That is,
like,
it's good. Put it on your CV. It's good for it. Yeah, it was just.
Hey, I've done an episode with Morpheus, so I can be Johanna Constantine. So.
There you go. It works perfectly. Yeah, there was just there was nothing about this that really jumped out, and I was like, oh, yeah, okay, because it did feel very gimmicky. Obviously, as you said, the monster of the week kind of trope is very endemic in a lot of ways to Doctor Who. But yeah, the Sandman and that stupid song, and then they got the computer at the one point that wouldn't let the guy get through the door unless he sang the song. So just leave the damn, just let it go, you know. And again, that's a song from like, what the hell was this, like the 38th century or something?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's like, if there's not even a comparison to like music that we would listen to, but yeah, I mean, the sand monsters were kind of gross, and the soldiers' uniforms looked like some recycled Band Geek shit I wrote. It just, everything just seemed very cheap in this episode.
Yeah.
And I just didn't dig it. They had the corridors that remind you of like corridors on the Enterprise where they just keep walking around in a circle. And it's like the Western where the guy's riding a horse and he goes past the same rock like 50 times. It was kind of the same thing. So very, very happy to leave this one behind, but it's good. It's a good balance to wedge this between two great two-parters, which, it started the season, and the one that you mentioned that there's a 12th episode, and I turned it off after the 11th episode we watched because I figured that was the season finale. But you're saying episode 12 keeps the story going. Oh, God, I have to tune back in.
Yeah, episode 12 picks up where we left off. The 12 is the season ender, and it wraps everything up.
My goodness.
It's worth the watch.
I will do that. All right. Well, let's jump into
wrap it. Talk no more about Sleep No More.
Yes, I've slept it off. Unless you had something else brilliant to say about it, I'm sorry.
No, I was
don't let me rob it from you.
Barrel. I was scraping the bottom to think of something good to say, and you don't have to say anything good about it. It is a bad episode.
Right. You can just let sleeping Sandmen do their whatever. So that's okay.
You can count on it. There's always a bad one. Every series of Doctor Who, you've got a stinker. Sometimes more.
It's kind of certainly the same thing with any Star Trek, sometimes more than others, depending on which show you're watching. Like we don't talk about the animated series where, in my parlance, the original animated series, the one from the 70s, which I know some people love it, but yikes. So anyway, we're wrapping up this, at least anyway, with basically two great parts of something that's a third part that I've got to watch. But episode 10 is Face the Raven, dun dun dun, which sounds like a prog rock album, Face the Raven, man. From November of 2015. So the Doctor and Clara get a call from Rigsy, who I assume is an established character because they seem very.
He was in Series 8 in an episode, yeah.
Gotcha. So, and he's got a wife and a baby and stuff, but he says, "Hey, I woke up today. I don't know what happened yesterday, and I've got essentially a countdown clock tattooed on the back of my neck." I was like, okay, that's a little weird. So, by hook or by crook, they're kind of helping him figure out where he came from because he doesn't remember, but they're able to use some wizarding logic to find a trap street, which Clara goes all the way through and explains the map methodology of a trap street. I was like, it's hidden, but then it's, it was laid down and then went over and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, they found basically this Diagon Alley kind of spot in present day London that just has a lot of alien refugees. And they find out that Rigsy was sentenced to death by a dude named Me. I didn't even catch his name, but he looks like, it's funny because all the guys look like Cockney bootblacks, you know what I mean? Including this dude with the big mustache and all this different stuff. But anyway, the mayor sentenced him to death because he was found of what appeared to be a dead body of a character, Anna. And he will be, when the clock runs down, killed by an alien raven. And the clock running down his neck is called a chronolock. And when it hits zeros, then it's time for him to die. And we do see an example of this with someone else who was a criminal and his clock ran down. And they try to run from the raven, but the raven's, it's like the rhythm, it's going to get you. But Clara does figure out talking to Rigsy and talking to the other aliens that the chronolock can be transferred to a willing recipient, and finds out that a willing recipient can take it, but because Me, the mayor, and that's, I thought she had some other name, but that's Maisie Williams' character, right?
Yeah. So her name is a shielder.
Okay.
Earlier in series 9, that's her name. They encounter her in a Viking village. She's the character that the Doctor makes immortal,
Right.
In an effort to save her. And so there's a couple of episodes middle of series 9 that weren't part of what we watched. We had to limit. But the real short version is she lives for centuries, and she has a human memory. So she can't remember things. So she writes things down. She keeps diaries, but she's kind of lost who she is over all these years.
Gotcha.
She just goes by me at this point because names
Oh,
don't matter
okay.
to her because she's not a shielder
Now
anymore. Anyone a
I get
shielder
it.
knew is gone, and
Right. So she just is.
had are gone, and so
Gotcha.
she doesn't
Gotcha.
age. Yeah, so she goes by me at this point.
Right. So, anyway, the body of the woman that Rigsy apparently killed is in a stasis pod. They find a way to unlock it, and amongst these aliens are actually it's Shuri from Black Panther is the daughter of this telepath that they thought was dead. They managed to free her, but by this point. By this point, the chronolock has run down. It's on the back of Clara's neck. Clara thinks she's going to be spared because they're under Me's protection, but Me can't remove it. And Clara dies. The Raven kills her. And Clara, her dying wish before getting, the life sucked out of her by this Raven. The Raven actually turns into smoke and it goes in you and then it sucks your soul out your mouth. Oh my God. But this whole thing was a setup. And obviously we're going to get into this in point 2, that Me orchestrated all of this to put basically a transporter lock stuck to the Doctor's wrist to transport him somewhere. So Clara dies and then he gets transported away, and that's the end of part 1. And I was like, she's not really going to die. I was stunned that she actually got killed because I didn't know. I had watched some Doctor Who before because you and Todd and I years ago did, give me 5 episodes of my favorite something, and we watched them. So we watched like 5 Buffys, we watched 5 episodes of TNG, and we watched 5 Doctor Who. But I never knew anything about how Clara died, and I don't feel like we ever watched any of these episodes back in those days. So these all felt super fresh to me. But I was I couldn't believe they actually killed her off. I was super bummed.
Yeah, that that episode, critically or in the fandom, Clara is kind of divisive because some people thought that she became too much the focus of the show. So there was this. There was even the joke. It was the show had become Clara Who instead of Doctor Who, and
oh boy,
I get that to a point. But I also think that's kind of missed. That was the whole purpose, not purpose, but like her character development was she wanted to become more and more like the Doctor. She craved that lifestyle, and as she stayed in the show through Series 8 and all through Series 9, she's becoming more risky. She's taking more risks. She's trying to be as clever as the Doctor and thinking, well, this always turns out okay. You always assume the Doctor will survive, so I'll just act like the Doctor, But what she doesn't have is she's not a Time Lord. She's a human, She doesn't have the knowledge that he has over the 1,000+ years he's been alive, She doesn't fully understand the workings or the rules of a chronologue that, of course, I'm talking like as if we would. I mean, it's just.
But the chronologue, of course.
There have been examples of she's been getting too risky and doing things too much, and there's little allusions to it in the preceding episodes. Even in this episode, when she's scanning for the trap street, hanging out of the TARDIS, and she's almost going to fall out of it, and she's laughing and having a good time, and Rigsy says, I think she enjoyed that too much, and. The Doctor says to her just offhandedly, he goes, yeah, it's becoming a problem. It's like he's realizing she's becoming too much like him. And it's going to turn out badly at some point. But he can't bring himself to stop it because that's his companion. That's, who he's with right now. And he doesn't like being alone. But she's really playing with fire. And this episode got to that point. So what I was saying is some people were glad that they actually killed her because
lame.
Okay, finally now you can move on to be the Doctor. But also they only had ever killed one companion in the history of the show, like literally killed them. So it's also something that doesn't happen very often. So there was this mix of, well, that was pretty surprising for sure.
Right. Big time.
So that, kind of, I don't know. Some people were, like I was saying, some people were happy, some people weren't. I thought the episode was great. I loved the last 15, 20 minutes of that episode.
Oh, God, yes.
Hard,
yeah.
And
right.
even you've probably only seen about 4 or 5 episodes total ever with Peter Capaldi and Jenna Coleman. But they killed that ending part of them, what was going to happen. And even after, she faces the Raven and the doctor goes back in there. That is where Peter Capaldi is like, I am the actor who owns this role. I'm the best actor this show's ever had, when he's telling the reason Clara, told me to, forgive or whatever, because that wasn't for her. It was she was saving you because
I'm gonna fuck you up.
You better stay out of my way. And
no shit.
He's all So this episode is not one of my favorites because I don't enjoy it, but the last 20 minutes are so good, and it's like how good these people are.
It's more like you don't like it, but perhaps you respect it in a certain way. Like you respect what they accomplished. I didn't see it coming. I didn't see it coming in episode 10 of the season. I didn't see it coming. Now, I'm not going to spoil too much for you if you haven't seen episode 12, but there is some wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey stuff that they do where... And that's what I kept hoping for in episode 11. I'm like, oh, she's not really dead because they're going to do something.
Watch episode 12, Charlie. Watch episode 12.
I will. I bet I won't have time today.
No, this bonus episode that one day. It's a good watch. It's just as good. It's not as good as episode 11, which is like the ultimate, but
it's... And it was just absolutely wow. What else did I have? Anything else on my? I think we covered everything that I had. But it was just that was a tough one to kind of. So, but Maisie Williams, I was like, what? And I love all the aliens were the Cockney bootblacks, and they basically were in Diagon Alley. Oh, this was an obvious set because when the other guy who's going to get chased down by the Raven runs, I'm like, they just keep running him back and forth in front of the same storefront. I'm like, you got to save a couple of bucks somewhere.
Well, I totally do what you got to do. But one other thing I'm going to say here, Clara, when she's leaving the doctor, when she's like, all right, I'm going to die. You're going to be alone. She has some various catchphrases that she's pulled with her, not really catchphrases, but things that she said when she started on the show with Matt Smith, run, you clever boy, and remember me. She says to Peter Capaldi here, don't be a warrior, be a doctor. When you're on your own, don't take revenge. She also tells Matt Smith that same thing when something's, I forget the exact details in series 7. She said, don't be a warrior, be a doctor, So, she's got a couple of good, they pull the heartstrings a little bit with, things that you refer back to, like the good times or her fun things that she says, and, all jokes aside, I really do enjoy the character of Clara because she's not just a companion. She takes it too far. She tries to become more and more clever and more like the Doctor, where other companions really didn't.
There's she was more of a foil. You're saying she was
the danger of if you let someone travel with you too long, they're going to try to become more and more like you. And what's interesting is in series 10, the Doctor kind of takes those lessons forward with him and has a different sort of relationship with the next companion to kind of keep the distance.
Gotcha.
Because he doesn't want to go through that again.
Gotcha.
It's a good episode. And it's really just part 1 of 3-parter.
Right. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Now I almost feel like we should talk about the last one, but that's okay. All right. let's wrap this up in an episode that I thought was nuts. And I tell you, I didn't figure out what the hell was going on. But I love the way it ended. So anyway, episode 11 of the series is Heaven Sent. And again, this is Stephen Moffat. So you can always tell it was always kind of that way in Star Trek when you're like, oh, they brought in a big one. So it's written by like one of the big 3, like one of the big creatives of that particular series. You knew that you were going to get
season openers, season enders,
you're going to get somebody who really, knows what the hell they're doing. They know the characters and they know they know how to write the show. So anyway, the doctor, we know, teleported away at the end of the episode. We didn't know where he was going, and he's in a chamber in a castle, and he starts getting followed around by this creature with big lizard claws, and it wants to catch up with him and kill him. He's guessing, but after it says, but discovers after giving a confession of some kind, the creature will temporarily retreat, and the castle starts to move. It goes full like MC Escher, things are changing around and doing all this different stuff. So the doctor is running around throughout this castle, he's investigating clues, trying to figure out what's going on. And he ends up in a room where he finds a wall made of asbantium, a mineral harder than diamond. And he realized he's been doing this for 7,000 years, which, hey, you know what? You use the fact that you've got an ageless character to make some time go by. I get it. When he gets that, and then from his other clues, he tries to keep breaking the wall and punching it. And then the creature comes up behind him and kills him. Or it mortally wounds him, it says here. But then he crawls back to the room that he appeared in, and he sacrifices himself as the configuration resets. And he beams back, and the whole thing starts over again. And he keeps going through it. And it's hundreds of years, and it's thousands of years, and it's millions, and it's billions of years. And he keeps punching the wall. And you're seeing in this last 10-minute segment, the wall, he's getting through. He's after millennia, he's getting through. And then he finally breaks through the wall in that current iteration after, I believe it is, 2 billion years or 10 billion years or something like that. And breaking through the wall makes the creature scuttle off. He steps through. What was behind him turns into a little disc, which is the little gears and stuff, which we've seen throughout the series, is what the episode that makes the castle shift around and everything happen. And he's back home on Gallifrey, and it's eons from now, because that's how much time has passed. And there's some kid standing by, and it's kind of like the end of a Christmas Carol, like, boy, get me the biggest goose in London. And so he's all badass, and he tells the kid, he says, go tell the Time Lords I'm back. And I know what you did. And that's the end of the episode. Holy crap. I absolutely, for the life of me, could not figure what the hell was going on. But by the time we got to the end of it, I'm like, holy shit, this really emphasizes everything that's great about a timeless character, is that he can do all this, go all this way forward. The story will continue. And then whatever it is that happens in the next episode is all timey-wimey and woozle-wuzzle and all that kind of good stuff. So, yeah. I dug it, but yeah, give me the master's perspective here. Not Missy, but you're the master, not her. Unless you regenerated, which I just, and I'm not going to say one's better than the other, but whatever.
I wouldn't mind sometimes. So this episode, I mean, this is like I say it's the high point of the show to me. I don't think the show has gotten better since this episode. I think this one. I remember vividly watching it when it came out. We watched it on the day it was broadcast. It was stunning to me, this episode. It's essentially a one-man show for 40-something minutes. It's all Capaldi showcasing him as just this powerhouse, amazing actor. He has no dialogue with anybody except for that little kid in the last 30 seconds of the show. And you're just mesmerized by this episode. It just holds you because you try to figure out the mystery too. And I remember watching it, not understanding it, being stunned when you finally figured out what was happening and what it was. And the music that they play under it, the literary piece that he keeps, the little story he talks about, the bird going to the mountain to sharpen its beak, and how long is a second in eternity. And then it starts going round and round, with all these cuts showing you him doing these things over and over again, that it's him being able to figure this out every single time. And he has to die every single time and then go back and, the episode opens where he shows up in that teleport, where he was sent, that there's a copy of him in that teleport, that if he can put some energy into it, that he can kind of reboot essentially, except, the new rebooted version has no idea of what's happened. So he does this discovery like billions of times,
Right.
break through this wall. And just that alone is like, wow.
Mm-hmm. Trying to wrap your mind around what that is, that he just going and configuring it. And I mean, did he, cut certain steps out over time, or did he have to go through the whole episode? So was it, billions of segments of 42 minutes of his time running around and having to figure, or did he remember things, or did he not? But he always kept his purpose, in going back and still punching the wall. And I guess punching it 50 billion trillion times is enough to break through it. And it was just, it was nuts. It was very next level kind of stuff to me.
And then there are 2 or 3 parts or times in the episode where it looks like he's about to be killed by this creature, right? And right before he gets killed, they kind of zoom off into him in the TARDIS showing off, it's like
right
in this fraction of a second or two, in real time, when the monster's about to get him, he kind of walks through, how am I going to get out of this? And he goes through this whole procedure, and he's got in his mind, he's picturing Clara helping him on the chalkboard, and helping him, like, not who's doing this, but why, or not why, but who, and what are you going to do to win? Always trying to figure this out. So it reminded me of Sherlock going into his mind palace when he would try to think things out on that show, which of course Moffat did that too. So there's a little bit of similarity there, but it was fun to kind of see how he would go through the explanation. And it was fun when you would, when he jumps out that window, he goes through all those things. He's throwing the petals off a flower. He drops the little magnifying glass thing. And then he goes in this whole explanation. Every single thing he did had a purpose. I'm measuring the air density. I'm measuring how strong gravity is. I'm listening to see how long before the stool hits the water. And you see, when he falls in the water, you have all those skulls. And he's like, oh, I'm not the only prisoner here. And then there's this one scene where when he finally opens the door to room 12, which is the room he figures out I've got to get to, and the brick wall is there, and he's lost, and he turns around. He says something like, run out a corridor, the story of my life.
Yeah, right. No, I like that.
But then the frame, kind of changes from his face to that skull on the ledge. And it's like, that's a framing piece of, it's showing you, well, this is him. This is him over and over and over. And he's only been the only prisoner here. And, it turns out ultimately that he's been trapped in his confession dial. That's where he gets teleported to. He's sent there by the Time Lords because the Time Lords want to know what he knows about the hybrid, which is that MacGuffin that's been there all series long. But every time he confesses something, the confession dial resets because they got a confession, but it's not the one they want. And he keeps refusing the one that they ultimately want.
Right.
And then once he gets through all that, whatever, diamond wall, or I don't know if Asbantium's real or sci-fi made up, but
sure, why not?
I don't know. I don't know that stuff. But once he gets through there and you realize where he was, the big reveal was that he was on Gallifrey, which was a shocking reveal for people at the time. That we're actually on Gallifrey and bringing in the Time Lords, and this is a big step. When he says the thing at the end of the episode, that the hybrid is me. The one that would rise to conquer Gallifrey, the hybrid is me. He's not actually meaning himself. He believes that it's me, Mayor Me, a shielder, the girl who's become a hybrid because she was a human that's also been made immortal.
Right.
So, but it's kind of one of those, you hear it and you think, oh, the Doctor's going to go conquer Gallifrey. No, Doctor's not. He knows it's not him.
Right. I just need to know. Yeah. How is it? But she was the one who set him up, or got set up by the Time Lords and said, oh God, see, now I got to see it. Now I got to say it. I got to know. It's mystifying.
Yeah. She was working with the Time Lords to get him sent there. So, I think it was more or less, I don't remember the details because I haven't watched episode 12 in a while. I'm going to watch it again probably this weekend just to finish it. I don't know. I can't watch 10 and 11 and not watch 12. I mean, just can't do it.
I would think, if it's a 3-parter, you don't watch 2/3 of it. It's just, no, I totally get it.
But it's great. It's like, and I would say 11's a little bit, but 11's better than 12. 12 is a good ending. but 11 is the high point. 11 is the one that just it blew you away. That was one of the few episodes that was either nominated or was up for an Emmy for Doctor
Oh,
Who.
wow. Wow.
Because it was fantastic. I can't. There's probably this episode, and then Blink with David Tennant,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a two-parter with David Tennant called Human Nature, Family of Blood. That's pretty much it. Those are like the best episodes in all of New Who to me.
Mm-hmm.
This one probably is the best episode of all of them.
Yeah.
But it's kind of hard to watch to get the full effect if you haven't seen some of the stuff leading up to it. But if you took an episode and said, you know what, this is what this show can be. This is what it can do. And if you can just watch that episode, you can kind of just watch that episode by itself, even though you missed out on a little bit of what's really happening.
Yeah.
You can see just how good it can be.
Right. Right. Wow. Yeah, totally.
It's creepy with the flies, and it's like, oh, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Slowly. It's like you can run, it'll walk. If you rest, it doesn't stop. It's like it's always going to come. And I think he said at one point that he timed it, that if he drew the creature to one end of the castle and ran all the way to the other, he had like 80 minutes or something.
88, 82 minutes or something like that. Yeah. It was
so that's how much time I have to sleep, or how much time I have to eat, or how much, that's it. And you think, well, shoot, he's been doing that for, so you don't know how long he's in that castle at each of his iterations doing it. But, it's been I think about like 2 billion years or something by the end. So it's crazy.
Oh my goodness. And you never see a bathroom or food supply, so you don't know where he's getting either one of those. But yes, it's timey-wimey.
Yeah. What is he eating,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what are you eating over 2 billion years? Oh my gosh. Well, holy cow. This has been amazing. And I'm excited that I got you back here. I'm excited, to have this kind of specialized content for our Patreon listeners. So as always, thank to them. John, I won't even ask you where people find you, because I know you're kind of a non-entity on social media, which I appreciate. That's totally cool. But we're going to keep this going. We're definitely this is going to be built in, I hope, into the rotation of some of the other shows that you're going to hear. You've already heard us talk about Buck Rogers. You've heard us talk about Battlestar Galactica, and we got a lot of stuff coming up for you as well. So this has been awesome. John, thank you for doing this with me. And we will come back.
Doctor Who, Charlie.
It was great. I guess I needed a push. I needed motivation, and that's what we have here. So, all right, cool. Patreons, once again, thank you for joining us. And we will see you next time. I always say, sharing is caring. Keep on trucking.